Okay. We left off at the very bottom of Lamed Beis Amid Beis. So we said, according to Rabbi Yosei Aglili, if you have an elderly person who's a Talmud Chacham, you have to stand for him. You have to acknowledge him. But even the Yonik Chacham, a young person, so Tosfos who's exceptional, you have to stand for him, even though he's Yonik. He's not an elderly person. The Tanakama argued. Tanakama is of the opinion that Torah without age, he's not an elderly person, you don't have to acknowledge that person. So the Gemara explained why Rabbi Yosei Glili learns as he does. It's the way he explains the pasuk. The Gemara says, "The Tanakama my taimo." So what's the rationale? What's the basis for the Tanakama? Why he says Torah is not sufficient? A young person who has Chochmah as Torah is not sufficient to acknowledge him as a Talmud Chacham. Of course, the Torah uses the word seva. P'nei seva tokum v'adarta p'nei zokin. Zokin definitely means mishukana Chochmah. But the question is, one who acquired Chochmah, does he also have to be the seva? So Tanakama says yes. My time Isok that come Rabbi Yosei Aglili. So he says, if it would be as Rabbi Yosei Aglili says that we're talking about two individuals in the pasuk, we're speaking about a seva person and we're speaking about a young person who possesses Torah. It should say, you should acknowledge old age, stand for him, vodarta, acknowledge him. Then it should say, takum vodarta p'nei zokin. Because we're speaking of two individuals. The elderly person who has Torah wisdom, who has Torah knowledge, but not exceptional, you have to stand for him, you have to acknowledge him. And the young person also, takum vodarta p'nei zokin. And if a person only has chokhmah without age, you also have to do both. Stand for him, acknowledge him. And since the Torah does not express itself, doesn't state it in this manner, Shema min echad said it's clear that we're speaking about, it's the same one individual. The person has wisdom, but in addition to chokhmah, he also has seva, he has old age. Omamar, we learned before in the Braisa, Yochel Yajun, when it says Vodarta, it's acknowledging. Acknowledgement. Maybe you have to acknowledge it with some level of financial expenditure. Talmud Loma Tokum Vodarta. There's no question. You have a Talmud Chacham, special Talmud Chacham come to your home, and you set a special table to acknowledge his specialness. There's no question. You're fulfilling the mitzvah of Vodarta. The question is, what is the obligation of Vodarta? Definitely, you're acknowledging, because you normally don't set a table like this for an ordinary person. You're only setting the table and going to the expense or to the effort because he's that special person. He was about the base obligation. When the Torah says Vodarta, does it mean there has to be some financial expenditure involved, some cost? Talmud Tokum Vodarta. Since the Torah associates Tokum, standing, with acknowledgement, Ma Kimo She'ebo Chasaron Kis. Just as when you rise, you stand, there's no financial loss, there's no expenditure or loss. Afidu She'ebo Chasaron Kis. Because the Torah associates both one with another. Somewhere has a question. The Kimo Lesbe Chasaron Kis. I mean to say, when you stand to acknowledge a Talmud Chacham, there's no financial loss. Is the Torah speaking limited only when there's no financial loss? Milo Askina, isn't the Torah speaking when it says Tokum, the Kodnosim Magniso, Adohochi Vochi Komi Kamei? If a person is actually piercing pearls or cutting diamonds, so he earns a very significant wage. So if he has to interrupt his work to acknowledge Talmud Chacham, so there's a cost factor over here. He's interrupting his work. So the Kima has a financial cost. So how do we say Hadarto there's no financial expenditure because it's juxtaposed to the Kamto, Tokum? Where do we see Tokum? There's no financial expenditure. Maybe also there is. Even if there's a financial cost, you have to interrupt your work to stand for him. Ela'akish, Shemar says the other way. Ela'akish kimo lihidu. We're associating standing to acknowledgement. Mahidu she'imbo bitl. What is an acknowledgement? You don't have to interrupt necessarily. A person works by, and you smile at him. or you nod your head. Nodding your head is definitely, there's no bittul malacha. Not a bittul malacha, you don't have to interrupt your work. Af kimo shebo bittul malacha. So, just as hidur, there is no interruption of work, so standing also, it's where you don't have to interrupt your work. Va'af akish nami hidur lakimo. But just as we're associating standing with acknowledgement, we associate acknowledgement with what? With standing. Ma kimo she'ebo chesaron kis. Right? There's no expenditure because we've already said, because hidur, there's no bittul mlocha. Af hidur nam she'ebo chesaron kis. Mikan omru, from here we learn, they had said, ein bali umnius rashoy lamud mitamli chachomim, ein rashoy. B'shor she'oskim b'mlachto. A person is a craftsman, he's working for an employee, he's not permitted to interrupt his work to stand for a Talmud Chacham. He's not permitted. It's a mitzvah b'avera. Because you're on the employer's time. It's not your time. Because that's chesaron kis. You have no right. The obligation of standing to acknowledge is only if there's no financial cost. But since there's a financial cost to the employer, therefore you're not permitted. You're not permitted to stand. Okay?
This is when somebody gets paid by the hour.
Well, by the day. Well, it makes no difference. I want a full day's. I pay you for the day. But a day means you work for me 8 hours. I want a full 8 hours. Your time is not your time. That's something else. No, that's understood. That's easy. That's the easy one. Because that's Efshel Kaim Shneim. There, when you're in the tree, the Mishnah says that if a person is an employee, he prunes trees, he picks fruits, whatever he does, he's on the branches. So Vishma, he's not permitted to come down. Because the level of kavanah one needs Vishma, you don't have to come down. So you're able to say the Shema on the tree. So it's called Efshel Kaim Shneim. You're able to accomplish both. There's no reason to interrupt your work to come down, the time factor. But for Shemon Esrei, we're there, you have to have a presence of mind and say Shemon Esrei on a branch, you're concerned you may fall. So, and since you have an obligation, so when the employer hires you, it's with understanding that he has to allow you to daven during the day. You have an obligation to daven. So that he has to provide that time for you. So even though there's a cost factor, it doesn't make a difference. But over here we're saying no. The Torah says the obligation of rising is only when there's no bittul malacha. When there's no bittul malacha. So over here, because he has to interrupt his work, the Torah says you have no obligation to stand. So if you stand, you're doing the wrong thing. That's called stealing. We're going to see it in a moment. We'll discuss that. Of course you should stand. But what's bittul malacha? No. That's not bittul Torah. That's honoring Torah. That's what Torah says. This is financial. There's a financial loss. You're not obligated to take a financial loss. So let's talk about another case. Let's talk about another case. You're a tutor. You're tutoring a boy. You have to give the father, you have to give him an hour's worth of tutoring. And the Rav walks in, and by interrupting, it's going to take away 30 seconds of teaching to the child. Do you stand? What would you say?
Yes.
Depends.
The kid learns to stand.
But the father doesn't want you to teach the child that. He has to pass the test tomorrow. Right? So the Gemara asks a question in the Dorim. There's a whole question. Tami Amikra, what we call the cantillations. Is it a Doraisa Drabanan? Halacha L'Mishim or it's a Drabanan? The rabbis, they're the ones, the Chachomim, they're the ones who put the cantillations on the words to communicate what is being said in the Torah. And based on the tune, that's what, or no, it's Halacha L'Mishim Sinai. Someone says, what's halachic difference? What's the difference? You know, a person is not permitted to charge for teaching Torah. You're not permitted to charge. Someone says, so how does a teacher, how is he paid for teaching children? You're getting a babysitting fee. Babysitting. It's not teaching. Teaching, you have an obligation to teach. Mani b'chinam avato b'chinam. As Moshe Rabbeinu says, as I was taught gratis, you have to teach. You have to pass on Torah. You're not permitted to charge. So how does the elementary school teacher take a wage? It's not for teaching Torah. It's only to discipline the children, to oversee them, to watch them, that they're not doing other things. So if that's the case, it's a job. It's a job over there. So it's not for teaching Torah. So it's no different than you're cutting diamonds or you're stringing pearls. It's the same thing. Bittul Moch, if the father says every minute I want you a full hour's worth of tutoring, so, right? So you're getting, the reason why you're getting paid is for babysitting. Where? They're not permitted. Rashoy means they're not permitted. Ein Rashoy. Rashoy means you're not permitted. They're not permitted. Ein Rashoy means they're not. No, I should say Osur. Asurin.
Ein Rashoy is less than Ein Chayovim?
No. Ein Chayov means, yeah, no, it's much more serious. One says you have no obligation. Here, they're not permitted. They're not permitted because they're stealing time from their employer. I mean, you could have asked, it should say, Ba'alim Asurin Lamod in the Talmud, but it doesn't have a good connotation.
No,
so therefore, in order, they're not permitted. Why aren't they permitted? Because they're on the employer's time. Yeah, right. They're not permitted. Right. Shoshim Osim Malachta, somewhere says below. So it would seem to be, it's not only to acknowledge a Talmud Chacham for any mitzvah. You're not permitted to acknowledge a person for doing a mitzvah because you're on the boss's time. When they would bring the Bikurim to Yerushalayim, they pass through towns, they come to Yerushalayim. So it says, all the craftsmen, regardless of what the craft is, they stand before them to acknowledge the people, to give them special value because they did the special mitzvah of bringing the Bikurim. V'shol b'shlomam. It's not only they stand, they actually enter in some degree of conversation. They ask them, how are you? About their welfare. V'omer lahem, achenu anchi mokum ploni. Our brothers, members of whatever community it may be. Bo'achem l'sholom. Bo'achem l'sholom, welcome and peace. So you see, they interrupt. So if you're able to interrupt to acknowledge a person doing a mitzvah, so if a person Talmud Chacham, why should you interrupt? Why, in regard to Torah, it's considered taking from the employer's time, and when it comes to acknowledge a person doing a mitzvah, that's not. What difference is it? Why should we differentiate? Omer Rabbi Yochanan. So Rabbi Yochanan answers, Mipneim Omdim. For these individuals, you do stand and engage in whatever degree of conversation you have to engage. Nei Talmid Chacham ein Omdim. But for Talmid Chacham, one does not stand. Why? So Rashi says, it's interesting. This famous Rabbi Kiva Eger in Mishnayos says that when they bring a baby in for a bris, so what do? You say Baruch Habo, right? Baruch Habo, and everybody stands. Everybody stands. So Rabbi Kiva Eger says, what is the basis for standing at a bris when they bring the child in for the milah? Similar to the Bikurim, that when the people come with the Bikurim, people omdim, they stand and they acknowledge them. That's the basis for standing at a bris when they bring the child in. We're talking about a person. He's doing his craft. He's a goldsmith, and as the person comes down the street, they have to stand and acknowledge and enter this conversation. Okay. So what is it all about? But why? Why is this mitzvah greater than Torah? No, but we're talking about it's in the middle of their workday. They're into. Om Rabbi Yossi Barovin. So Rabbi Yossi Barovin says, "Borei kama chaviva mitzvah b'shato." From here you see how important, how beloved a mitzvah to a mitzvah in its proper time. Mitzvah b'shato. Shem neim omdin. For these individuals, we stand. They Talmid Chacham ein omdim. Here, this Bikurim is once a year. They bring whenever they bring it. They come, you acknowledge them. Because you want to give them that special value that they're doing the mitzvah in its proper time. Then you could delay it. Wait a few years, bring it. Someone says, Vilma Shani Hosam. Maybe over there it's not because of that. Shani Hosam Dimkein. Nimtzat Atomachshil Osad Lovo. Person comes and nobody looks at them. Here they come and they lug all this fruit from wherever they're coming. And nobody even pays attention. They say, you know something, next time we're not coming. If this is the reception we get, this is the welcome, we're not coming next time. So it's not because Chavim mitzvah b'shato. He wanted to draw from here how beloved, how special is to do a mitzvah in its proper time. It's not that. It's because over here, if you don't, you can discourage him from coming next time. What did they benefit? How did they benefit? They gave it. Oh, because it's good for the economy. We're talking about Bikurim. An ordinary guy, a person who comes, Alisa Regal, we don't acknowledge them. We don't. It's Bali Bikurim. What do you mean? You're supporting the economy. No. I mean, at Ben Gurion Airport, you should have a delegation waiting, a welcoming delegation. You're helping the economy. And the guys who run to wherever it is, to Scandinavia for Yom Tiv, so you say, Tzeichem L'Shalom, you don't have to come back. Okay. No, because
They don't feel acknowledged.
they don't feel here. They go with, and they make the effort to bring all this produce.
They're doing this because there's a mitzvah.
This is the old story.
You know, we don't say that when a person is commanded to do a mitzvah, that other people need to encourage them, because otherwise they're not going to do the mitzvah.
The Gemara says in Brachos, Divrei Torah Chizuk. Torah, you always need. You have to shore it. You have to strengthen it. You have to encourage it. You can say it's not, even though it's a mitzvah. A person comes to shul and nobody pays attention to him. They don't give him a siddur. They give him a. But you're a religious Jew. You think it's pleasant? The person's welcome. It's a whole different feeling. He's encouraged to come again, and he wants to come. Do you want it should be like pushing a boulder up a mountain, or do you want the person naturally be drawn to want to come? So therefore, to encourage people to do it, so you give them the welcome, you put out the welcome ad for the person, and you encourage people to welcome him. That's Nibzeh Machshin Lo Lovo.
Those specific
The other mitzvah,
Bikurim.
people are encouraged. The other one I can think of is like the product they don't want them not to come, so we interrogate the many hours. We were different, but it's a psychological element of the mitzvah.
See, there, it's worse by accepting the witnesses. No. There they came to testify, and they say, no, we don't need you. See, you wasted our time. Here, factually, they're getting credit for the mitzvah. They bring the Bikurim here. Even when they get credit, if a person doesn't feel welcomed and he's ignored, he's going to be discouraged from coming next time. Right? Here, it's even more so. Despite having value, he'll still be discouraged from coming. So what about Alisa Regal? Alisa Regal, everybody's in the same boat. Right? Everybody's coming. Okay? Omamar, we learned in the Braisa, Yochel Yamod Biponov Beisakis Beisamerchotz. Maybe one has an obligation to acknowledge the Talmud Chacham, to stand for him in the Beisakisei, Beisamerchotz, in the bathhouse. Okay? Stand. So it says, no, at the Kimo, it's only where it is Hidur. You only have to stand where the acknowledgement, similar to where the acknowledgement has value. So since a Beisakisei is not a Mokum Hidur, it's not a location for acknowledging a person, you do your whatever it is, you function there, and then you leave. Therefore, one has no obligation to stand. So Gemara tells over a story that we find a case in the Beis HaMerchotz that people did not stand because they didn't stand. There was a claim. Reb Chia was in the bathhouse. Reb Shimon Berebi. And as he was in the bathhouse, Reb Shimon Berebi passed by. Reb Shimon is the son of Reb Yudah Nosi. And Reb Chia did not stand. He's in the bathhouse, he didn't stand. And we just said, what is standing? You only have an obligation to stand only if it's a location of Hidur. And Beis HaMerchot, it's not a location of Hidur. V'ikpit, and he was offended. We'll see in a moment. Wait. V'osav omalei lavua. And he went and he told his father. Seems to be petty over here. We'll see in a moment. Well, it's not so petty. He went and he reported to his father, Rabbi Yudah Nossi. Rabbi Chia was a student of his father, Rabbi Yudah Nossi. He says, Shnei chumoshim shanisi lo b'sefer tilim v'lo omad miponai. Tilim is divided into 5 sections. He said, I taught him the Agoda on 2/5 of Tilim. Some is Rebbe. So even though they're colleagues, they are colleagues, but nevertheless, because he taught him, therefore he has an obligation to acknowledge him. So he should have stood. But if he was saying that in a location where there's no hider, where it's not in a location of acknowledgement, so there's no obligation to stand, so what's the basis for his claim? I mean, we're not talking about, if this is the halacha, Reb Shimon Rebbe is not going to speak to his father about this. And then the Gemara tells over another story. Su bar Kapora. There was a person who was bar Kapora, was also a Talmud of Reb Yudah Nossi. Va'amri lo Reb Shua bar Reb Yossi. Hava Yossi be Mesusa, in the bathhouse. All v'ozer Reb Shimon Rebbe. Again, incident with him. Evidently he's passing by the bathhouse. He went by the bathhouse, Reb Shimon the son of Rebbe, v'lo kama kamei. And again, he didn't stand for him. Ikbid. V'osa amalei lavua. And he went and he reported to his father. He said, Shnei shlishe shlish, shanisi l'b'toras kanim. 2/3 of a third of the brises of Toras Kanim, which has to do with this Sefer Vayikra. I taught him, but lo amad miponai, and he didn't stand for me. Okay, this is his complaint. So let's try to understand what's exactly going on. What is it? There's pettiness here. This is personal. What exactly? Now, we have a concept known as Bali Masorah. You know, people set standards. What is Torah? Who sets standards? Who sets what is and what's not? It's part of our Masorah. So if the Masorah is that you're supposed to stand in the bathhouse, and he's not standing in a bathhouse, evidently, this is a what? He's breaking rank over here. This is not the Masorah. And since Rabbi Yudah Nossi is responsible that the Masorah is intact to pass on to the next generation, if we tolerate this behavior here, this will undermine what the Masorah is. This diktat. Diktat wasn't his personal honor. If the halacha dictates you must stand, even in a bathhouse, so these people are corrupting the Masorah.
There's Masorah with stand in bathhouses.
No, so there's no question. Reb Shimon Rebbe, he knew the halacha. Evidently, that's the halacha. It's not. There's an argument here whether you do or don't. And we'll see in a moment what his father answered him. His father answered him that not that you're wrong. He says maybe they were preoccupied in learning, they didn't notice you. So it seems to me Rabbi Yudah Nossi agreed that if they would have noticed him, even the bathhouse would stand.
Why didn't he go directly to his college? What's he going to his father for? He rebuked the colleague, say he should have stood up.
So what would you say?
And it may have been a failing of the generation, and that would be Rabbi Yehuda's responsibility.
Okay. I mean, these are the role models, right? Reb Chia is the role model, right? The Gemara tells over a story about Mitzia that I think it was Rav Papa. Rav Papa had a discussion with Reb Chia, and Rav Papa had the ability to delve very deeply and to engage in all kinds of levels of discussion in Torah. So I think it was Rav Papa's sister Reb Chia says, not for my pupil, Torah wouldn't exist today. Reb Chia says, not for me, there wouldn't be Torah today. So the Gemara says, what did he do? What did Reb Chia do? So Reb Chia went and he planted flax, and he reaped the flax, and he took the flax and he spun it into thread, and he made nets, and he took the nets and he trapped deer. He slaughtered the deer, he took the hides and he processed them into cloth, into parchment. He sold them, he gave the meat to the poor of these deer, and he took the hides and processed them into cloth, and he wrote first 5 chumashim on the cloth, and then he wrote down the Shisha Sidrei Mishnah. Shisha Sidrei Mishnah. And he said to each one of the children, these young children, they weren't little children, he says, and he taught each one of the Chumashim or one of the Shisha Sidrei Mishnah, and he says, now you have an obligation to teach your fellow what I taught you. So each one taught the other one, and this is the basis why Torah exists in Klal Yisrael. Because Reb Chia had done. What he had done? So you see Reb Chia over here is responsible for the continuation of what? Of Masorah. So Reb Chia himself, we're talking about Reb Chia, if he doesn't stand for Shimon Reb Yossi, so evidently it's a faulty Masorah over here. It's not going to be passed on properly. Therefore he goes to the source. Rabbi Nossi is one, he's the one who committed Torah Shabbat Peh. What reviews the Gemara says in Tamura? What review the Nossi commit Torah Shabbat Peh to writing? Because since he was concerned, people started to forget the end of Torah. Although on a Torah level you're not permitted Dvarim Shebal Peh Yato Rashi Lekosvam, although you're not permitted to commit to writing, because here was a question, everything was in jeopardy, he committed it. This is Rabbi Yudan Nossi. So who's responsible for the eternity of Torah? Rabbi Yudan Nossi. He says, but we got a problem. The people who are going to be your successors to carry it on, it's a faulty Masorah. So it's not he went to tail bear on them. He's tattling on them. No. This is the ultimate over here. And as it's faulty here, it can be faulty in other locations. So what did he say to them? Omar lo shema behen yoshev u'maharir. The reason why they didn't stand, it's not because they don't know the halacha. Of course they would have stood for you. But because they were preoccupied in Torah, therefore they didn't even notice you. But if they would have noticed you, they would have stood.
This is a question, I think, if it's enough.
But the Gemara's going to discuss that in a moment. Wait. It's interesting. There's a story that, right at the break of World War II, so Kamenetz was going to be invaded by the Nazis, Yamach Shemam. Kamenetz. And miraculously, the whole yeshiva escaped to Vilna. Nothing happened to them. But there were some students who were there where they wanted to ask permission from him. They lived in other countries to leave, and they were able to get out before the borders were closed. They were able to get out. And Reb Baruch Meir was preparing a shir to say, he used to say a public lecture a few times a week. And it was known Reb Baruch Meir prepared a lecture. He was involved for a number of hours. His mind was so occupied with the shir, if you would speak to him, and you'd look at his eyes, and you'd speak to him and his eyes are wide open, you'd see he was somewhere else. So this person went to Reb Reuven Guzovsky, who oversaw the yeshiva, and Reb Reuven says, go speak to my father-in-law. They live in the same house. Walks in, Reb Baruch Meir is in the Gemara, picks up his head, he looks at him, the person presents his problem, he received a telegram from his parents, he has to leave, this and that, he needs a visa, he needs a this, his passport, whatever it was. Reb Baruch Meir is looking at him, and the person speaking for about 20 minutes, and he realized there's no communication here. He's not hearing what he has to say. And he looks in his eyes, and sure enough, he sees he's in another world. That was his level of immersion in the subject matter that he was going to say this year. And only it took a while for him to get out of, to come back to be able to talk to him. This is Reb Baruch Meir we're talking about over here. This is Reb Chia. Reb Chia's his depth of involvement when his mind was preoccupied with Torah. Is he going to notice a person? Reb Baruch Meir, who just passed away at the beginning of World War II, didn't notice a person. So Reb Chia would notice a person. Reb Kapora would notice a person. If not, so Reb Shach, some of the people here maybe met Reb Shach, Tzaddik Levrocha. He was a very interesting person. He had the purity of a child. So Reb Shach, and he wasn't a tall man, he was a short man. So Reb Shach, also when he prepared for the shir, so he was sitting in the base medrash, and he didn't even realize he fell off the chair. He was on the floor. He fell off the chair. He didn't even realize when he hit the floor that he was on the floor. That's the degree he was involved. So one of the students sees, immediately runs over with another book, and they pick him up and they put him on the chair. So as they started to manhandle him, so to say, he came to it. So he spoke a real Lithuanian Yiddish. right, real Lithuanian Yiddish. He says, "Reisnis was die Bochen will from here." What do these people want? They're manhandling him. He didn't know where he was. He didn't realize they took him off the floor and put him back on the chair. We're talking about this is going back 20 years ago. Since 20 years ago. So Rav Papa, Bar Kapora, and Rav Chia, what was their level of immersion in Torah? So Rabbi Yehuda Nasi said it's understood. There's no way that they didn't know the halacha. So why didn't they stand? It's clear. It's because they were preoccupied in Torah. They didn't notice you.
We said yesterday that if Achrei is being performed, one has to be aware. It's one's business to be aware. You can't just sit there.
Put it this way. When you're in shul, you come to shul for one thing, to daven. When you're in the bathhouse, you're in the bathhouse to what? To do your thing. You don't expect people coming here. So there, of course, you have to be focused to do what you're supposed to do. One of the things is when they take the Torah out, to acknowledge the Torah. Okay?
You can't use this as an excuse.
No.
I'm so immersed in thinking I'm sitting on
But we're going to see in a moment, sometimes a person can't help themselves. A person whose mind is so, is the famous, the rugged trouble. The halacha is a person is not permitted to study Torah at the shul. Not permitted. And also, God forbid, a person's in Ovel, in the middle of Shiva, he's not permitted. Rogachev, his wife passed away. And he studied Torah. He studied Torah. So if you read about the Rogachev, the level of genius that he was, it was like beyond our understanding. It was like a computer. And the Rogachev, his name was Rabbi Yosef Rosen, that was his name. And he studied Torah in the middle of the Shiva. That he was sitting Shiva for his wife. So he said to him, "You're not permitted. Allah says you're not permitted." So immediately he responded. That is Yerushalmi. The Yerushalmi says, what's the halacha? If the person is in tremendous pain, agony, he has to interrupt the Shiva to go to a doctor. But whatever it may be, he interrupts the Shiva. Doesn't make a difference. So Shalmi says, in regard to Torah, if a person is denied studying Torah, that he's in agony, he's permitted to study Torah. So there, the Torah is not to give him joy, it's to remove the pain. That was his answer. You understand? That was his connection to Torah. So a person, you esteem it and revere it, that if you're not attached, you're in agony, so what's his level of immersion? So if a person has that kind of mind, as much as you try, very often, you shift into that mindset, you're oblivious to everything. So that's not considered you being negligent, because we'll see in a moment. So the Gemara says, "Time of the ben Yoshiv Maharer." The only reason why they didn't stand for him in the bathhouse is because they were immersed in Torah. Holafochilo. But if not for that, they had an obligation to acknowledge him. But we just said before in the Braiso that in the Beis HaMerchatz one does not. Lokasha. Hopati gavoya boti broi. There are two rooms. There's an inner chamber in the bathhouse and there's an outer chamber. The outer room, we had this tomorrow on Shabbos. The outer room, people go dressed. They address themselves. They go into the location where the bathhouse is. That's where people are naked. So where are you not permitted to study Torah? That's the inner chamber, the inner room. The outer room, you're permitted to study Torah. So therefore, in the inner room where people go naked, it's not a location for acknowledgement. It's not a mokum hidur. So therefore, and the Gemara can prove, because you see that they were meditating in Torah. If it's the equivalent of a Beis HaKisei, a Beis HaMerchatz, which is unclean, you're not permitted to think in Torah. So how did they think in Torah? And Rabbi Yehuda Nasi says they were immersed in Torah thought. It's evidently clearly they weren't on the inner room, they were on the outer room. Every location permitted to what? To meditate in Torah. So therefore it's clear they were in the outer room. So the outer room, it's a mokum hidur. It's a location of acknowledgement. Therefore he came with a claim. So before when it says one does not acknowledge, that's the inner room, that's the bathhouse where people go naked, where they actually bathe. The outer, that's the story. Mercer says no proof. Dilma la'otse shayni. Let's say a person is so involved in Torah, he's not able to detach himself. He's an onus. I'll give you an example. The Mogen Avram says, just end with this, a person is in the bathroom, and all of a sudden he has certain thoughts, lewd thoughts come to mind. So the halacha is you're permitted to think in divrei Torah even though you're in the bathroom, even though you're doing your bodily functions. Why? Because the person, the only way he could distract himself from that thought, he has to immerse himself in this. He's an onus. To be continued.